So thank you so much for speaking with me for the Hindu Frontline. Leaves No Green, your book is very immersive and thought-provoking read. And my first thought was, at any point, did you think of this to be a work of non-fiction rather than a fiction? So this is what I found a bit interesting. Like, why did you choose to tell the story as a work of fiction instead of non-fiction?
Uh, well, I had been writing for over half a century now.
Yes.
I am past 18 now. And I have done quite a few books on the tea, because obviously it's Assam's main industry, the history of tea.
Yes.
And I have written books, around three books. One is called The Tea
Yes.
Story.
Yes.
That's a
Which
very well
traces
known
the
book.
history of tea around the
Yes,
globe.
the
Yeah.
entire global history.
Mm.
And while researching for these books, I found this episode wherein the pioneer tea planters, because they had difficulty securing labor, and the local people, they were unwilling, because they were farmers, they had their own fields to plow. They were unwilling to work under the Firangis, or they call them Boga Bongals, or white people from Bengal. Now, and the pioneering British planters were forced to import labor, indentured labor from the rest of India. This is like Chota Nagpur, parts of Bengal, Madhya Pradesh. Now, they entrusted this recruiting to very ruthless recruiting agents. And they were, derogatory called coolie catchers. This term coolie, that time it was very much in usage. I made that clear in the very early part of my book. And it was definitely one of the most barbaric phases of British imperialism. Now we know about, the slave trade from Africa to the European colonies. We know about, you know, people being sent to places like Mauritius. But this chapter, the British tried to suppress it. You do not find it in many history books. The kind of barbarities they perpetrated on the people who are brought to Assam to man the early pioneering tea plantations. So this is basically, I found the facts and the details, but obviously I wanted, because I am a writer of fiction, I wanted to translate this kind of information into a fictional novel, so that the readers are more attracted, and perhaps through HarperCollins I'll get a bigger audience for the kind of information that the book contains.
Mm.
But mind you, you know the facts contained in the book, they are documented facts,
Yes.
documented not by official British historians, but by some planters and also some local historians. And as well as you can find this mirror in the kind of story, songs and lyrics the tea gardens, the workers themselves
Mm.
sing.
Mm.
So it is definitely a work of fiction,
Mm.
but based upon historical facts.
Right.
The characters like Cordelia or David or Henry David Escombe or James Buckingham, the ruthless tea planter, and Christopher Christopher James Buckingham and uh, Balin, all these characters, I have visualized them and tried to recreate, give them the appropriate place in my, but it's basically a work of fiction
Mm.
based upon some historical episode of the past.
Right. So your work, would we say that your work, that Chagaram, which happened to be published in early 90s, I think 1991, if I'm not wrong, that long
Yes,
ago.
yes.
Yeah. So the research that you had put in to write that book, did it sort of lay the groundwork for this current book?
Yes, I mean, it laid the ground, but I did further research
Right.
because that was, dealing with the history of the entire tea industry,
Mhm.
starting from China, coming to India, alternative this thing, and then going to other countries. So it is an extremely vast kind of a subject. I just picked up one specific episode
Mm.
of this vast thing and put
Mm.
it in my. So obviously, the initial research I did, it formed the kind of core material for this novel.
Mm.
But I later followed it up with the express
Mm.
purpose of exposing this chapter, and that is why it contains something more than
Mm.
what Chagram contained.
Right. Right. And you just mentioned the how the book also captures the ruthlessness of the colonial period. But your characters, most of them, they are so human, and in the sense, uh, even in while there is juxtaposition of someone being ruthless, there is another character like Cordelia. She is very
Yes.
she's an epitome of humanity, so to say. So, was that a
Yes.
conscious decision? How did you go about writing those characters? If you could speak a little bit about that.
Well, as I told you, I've been writing for over half a century now,
Yes.
and I began my entire writing career with writing fiction. I had not thought about branching into nonfiction.
Mm.
And in the beginning, my juvenile fiction, they received a widespread acclaim. Books like The Kaziranga Trail or The Blind Witness, they were made into films and all that.
Mm.
And I found that I got stuck in juvenile fiction. And obviously, I began my career as a college lecturer. And but that was my intention was to become a full-time writer, but you needed time, and in those days, being a college lecturer, you had ample time and opportunity for writing. Anyway, later I gave up the job and became a full-time writer. But my initial source of bread and butter was juvenile fiction. And then I wrote a book which I had, wanted from my heart. That was to be my magnum opus. I spent 4 years with a novel called The Anagarika's Swan Song. It's a highly philosophical and extremely intricate kind of a novel based upon the life of Gautama Buddha.
Mm.
Now, the postulate of the novel, the anti novel basically, was that, if today in our modern century, when Kali Yuga is operating, if a protagonist sets out from his home, leaves his wife and everything behind, and goes out in search of enlightenment, he won't get enlightenment. He will land up in the local Pagalkhana, lunatic asylum. So this was the postulate, and I took around 4 years to complete that novel. Unfortunately, I took another 4 years to try to find a publisher for that novel. Nobody was willing to take it. And ultimately, I thrust it aside. And at that time, by then, of course, course, the my juvenile fiction had caught on very well, and it was providing me adequate bread and butter to
Mhm.
survive. But then I discovered that writing non-fiction, I started with a book called Unicornis. It was, commissioned by a New Delhi publisher. And then I came on to Chaga. I have around 11 non-fiction books. And those are very, what you call, written after a great deal of research. I have visited almost all the libraries in India, except the south, of course. In Calcutta, I visited the National Library and other libraries. Then I went to Delhi. And of course, for tea, there's a fantastic library in Jorhat. It is a Toklai Research Center. You must have heard of it. The Toklai Library is one of the most useful of all tea libraries. And there I came across old records. For example, the Assam Company, of which you might have in my novel. The Assam Company, their records of their reports of their people who are supposed to be inspecting the gardens, those kind of material. And ultimately, I was able to visualize. And as I told you, I have the writer's imagination. So I could visualize this kind of character. But unfortunately, Anagarika Swan Song lay gathering dust till a few fans of mine, very devoted fans, they thought that this should not go to waste. So they put in their own resources to bring out that novel. And it received quite a good, review, but it did not catch on because it was not published by one of our so-called, you know, leading star publishers.
So, um, and this novel also sheds light on the lives of plantation laborers and the coercive system that sustained the tea industry. And although this is set in 1860s, how much of the world still resonates today with the situation that the laborers are in?
It was actually, it began in 1850 when Henry David Escom went to Assam to Kundadhan. And David and Cordelia, they come only in the 1860s.
Yes.
So, but the actual life depicted is 1860s.
Yes.
Now, if you know something about the history of Assam tea, you will discover that the success of Assam Tea Company and another company called Jorhat Tea Company suddenly galvanized the mercantile tea population in tea community in Calcutta. And everybody made a beeline for Assam. They thought that to plant a tea bush was to become an instant millionaire. And it was called the tea mania. Now, in Assam, because the British by then had annexed Assam, they were the masters of the land. So they could give, land absolutely without any kind of fee to anybody who applied for it. So choice jungle land, because tea grows at a slightly higher level, it doesn't grow in low-lying areas. So thousands and thousands of acres in Assam, which could otherwise have gone to uh, our local farmers, they were occupied by this horde of tea planters who came to Assam, descended on Assam, I would rather say. So that is the kind of background the tea mania background, which is being depicted in that period.
Hmm.
You know, or Balin, he builds up a uh, garden called Sakuli. I mean, he purchases a garden called Sakuli from one person in Calcutta. He lands up at Sakuli and finds that there is no garden. It is simply a vacant plot of land with some old pea bushes stuck in the ground to make it look like an garden. So, I mean, there's lots of chickenery and uh, cheating going on in Assam among the white imperialists who had come to Assam. Uh, some of it is mirrored in the book, especially in the dialogue of Reverend Gary Swanson. If you study that character, that is a realistic character based upon the Baptist missionaries who had come to Assam from America. They were the first missionaries to come to America. And the Baptist missionaries, they were not British, mind you, they were Americans. And they had a clearer perspective of what was happening. And as Gary Swanson says, that I mirror what is happening. And he is a big critic of imperialistic, the system.
Right.
And ironically, he warns David and Balin that if you cannot change this system, the system will change you. And that actually happens to David. Because if you have read the novel, you'll find that the David and Cordelia were, knit in a very tight bond in the beginning.
Yes.
But as the compulsions of, running a tea garden began to overwhelm David, you find that this kind of bond dissipated.
Yes.
And ultimately, Cordelia couldn't even, have any kind of feeling for her own brother, with
Yes.
whom in the beginning she was so close.
No, so what I was asking is the situation of laborers that is portrayed in the book. How much of that you still continue to see in the tea gardens in Assam that is run now in 2026?
Well, things have improved dramatically in the course of the decades. Today, you know, the condition of the workers is far better than those early days of 1860s. But then, I mean, in India, one
But
cannot
yeah,
say,
yeah,
yes, one cannot say with certainty that everybody is well. So, to some degree, the tea workers have been uplifted from the conditions they were before. But again, this, what you call the commercial motive. Commercial motive is still operating. So when there is commercial, profit and loss considerations, then there has to be some degree of exploitation. And that degree of exploitation, unfortunately, still exists, especially among the proprietorial tea gardens.
right. Yeah.
For instance, the kind of emphasis that is needed to be given to uh, education, the workers, that is, I think, still leaves a lot to be desired.
The colonial period, the residue effect of it, do you still see in the present day lives? Do you see it in the present day lives of the laborers and living in India, in Assam especially? Um, the conversations related to labor right and migration and inequality, or all of those. Do you think it traces back to the colonial history that we share.
Yes. Unfortunately, the colonial period was, as I said, it was absolutely, the ethos was a commercial ethos. Now, when the British left, the same ethos was brought into a tea garden by our Indian planters. Because these Indian planters, they were not this thing, they were all businessmen. So only British businessmen were replaced by our Indian businessmen. And because the local people, they did not have the resources to take over plantations. You find big business groups from outside who had ample resources could compensate for the vacuum that was created by the departure of the white colonialists. So the system to a long period, it did, survive. The system that was operating in the imperialistic period, that survived to right up to the uh, even the 21st century in some cases. So yes, you are right. We still see vestiges of this colonial period in today's thing. For example, the my Bap philosophy, father mother philosophy, that still in operates in some sections of uh, the tea community. But again, I repeat, things have improved a great deal since the
Yes.
initial pioneering phase of British tea.
Assam, the state of Assam, is a character in the book, which probably is true for many other works of yours as well. I was wondering
Yes.
how important it is for you to introduce the state, its people, its history and landscape to to the readers who probably are not familiar with the region.
Yes, I have, made it a mission to try to, reflect or try to familiarize other parts of the country and the world with this, the Northeast in general and Assam in particular. And there's a very, biographical element in it. Because when I was around 8, 9 years old, I was sent out of Assam. I was born in Jorhat, that's a tea town, Jorhat. But I was 8, 9 years, I was sent out to Lawrence School, Sanar. That was a residential public school. So, and then I went, after passing out senior Cambridge from Sanar, I went on to Ramjas College in Delhi, then Delhi University. So 12, 14 years I was out of Assam. I would only come back for those short holidays. We even had only winter vacations. Sanar, of course, is a well-known registered school based in near Kasauli. Now, I noticed from a very early stage that people outside, they knew nothing about the Northeast or Assam. It is only now that Assam and Northeast has come into
Yeah,
focus.
yeah.
But during those days, there was, they didn't know. For instance, my nickname in school was Headhunter. Just because I came from Assam, I was given the nickname of Headhunter. That was a reflection on how much the students or that Sanarian community knew about Assam. So, secondly, I also saw that not only did these people, the outside people, did not know about Assam and Northeast, but also this place was, extremely different from the kind of ethos that prevailed in North India, where I spent most of my time. It was a very, what you call languid, easygoing way of life. So what I wanted to do was to portray this kind of existence. And you are right. I think 90% of my writing is devoted to Assam and Northeast. And not only Assam, because, for instance, one of my uh, young adult novels is set in among the uh, this Khamti tribe of Arunachal. Similarly, one of my thing is the Khasi tribe of Meghalaya. So even I was trying to, that is what you had said, and that is absolutely right. I was trying to familiarize the rest of the country into uh, knowing something about this region. And I think one of my greatest contribution was to familiarize the country with Kaziranga. One of my young adult novels, the very first longer fiction that I got published, it was called The Kaziranga Trail.
Yes.
Now that novel, when it was published, it created a sensation because till then there was no young adult novel in India with Indian characters and having conservation of as the theme.
Yes. Yes.
So Kaziranga Trail, it achieved a cult status in those days. That was in the late 1970s. So just half a century ago. And but now, that time nobody had heard of Kaziranga. But through this book, which has been translated into numerous Indian and foreign languages, it was made into a film. So through a book that like Kaziranga Trail, Kaziranga was made globally known. And you will be happy to know that Julia Eccleshare has edited a New York publication, 1001 books you must read in your life or before you grow up. Sorry. That's a New York publication, very thick volume. And there are two entries from India. One was Anita Desai's Village by the Sea and my this Kaziranga tree. So that was a huge contribution, which I think. And today, have you been to Kaziranga?
Yes, I am from Assam.
Oh, you're from Assam. Okay. So then, obviously, Kaziranga is completely transformed from
Yes,
what it used
very
to be.
commercial.
Yeah, it has become extremely distinct.
I have one last question for you. For readers who are new to the literature from the Northeast, which English language authors or books would you recommend other than you?
Yeah, you can read Arup Hoike's The Braided River if you want to learn something about the Brahmaputra or something about society, Sanjay Hazarika's Strangers in the Mist, books of that kind. And we have fictional writers like Mamangdai or King Ham Singh. I mean, they are saying they have also portrayed their part of the world. King Ham from Meghalaya, Mamang from Arunachal. So now there's lots of choices options available to any avid reader. Unfortunately, avid readers are becoming more and more hard to come by.
Do you still see hope in the generation that is growing? Do you still see hope in them that they are picking up books and reading or are interested in literature and history?
I won't like to beat my own drum, but I have been a what you call for a long, long period, a uh, propagandist for book reading. Why books are important? I have visited numerous schools, even in places like Delhi and elsewhere. Also, I have given lectures to young people about the importance of cultivating the book reading habit. And also, even in Delhi, I have spoken about this theme. So, I think, no, I'm not very optimistic that again the new generation would revert to reading books. They might revert to reading, but that is a different kettle of fish altogether. Books, the printed book, I think it is on its way out. I don't know for how long it will survive. But a book which, I remember very young in childhood, as a student, I read the Diary of Anne Frank. And I used to keep that book under my pillow. I loved it so much. So that is that you cannot take a Kindle or an internet this thing and shove it under your pillow. I mean, books have a different flavor of their own. I sincerely hope that the new generation, I hope, gets to, tries to become familiar with the aroma and, touch, feel of books. That's
Right.
my fervent hope.
Right. So you are hopeful about the new generation being into reading. What you are not hopeful is that if they will pick up books, physical books.
Because there's so many alternative options.
Yes. Yes. Well, sir, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful. I mean, this was a wonderful, opportunity for me. Thanks to Frontline, because I am from Assam, and I was very excited to read the book as well as to, speak with you. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.